Happy Friday, everybody. How's it going? Don't be too excited, everyone.
I'm
excited.
It's Labor Day weekend, right?
It is
but
Labor
I'm
Day
also
weekend.
excited to be here. I think you're going to be working on your house, right?
Yeah, we kind of opted not to go on a trip just to spend time working on stuff. Do you celebrate? It's Labor Day in the States. You're in Canada, right? Do you have the same thing there?
Yeah, we do have a technically a holiday on Monday. However, with the company being across the world and headquartered in Europe, the holidays usually don't line up. So I'll be working on Monday.
Happens.
You've been out in the wilderness, if I understand correctly. Is that right?
Oh, it was absolutely fantastic. I am very lucky to live in BC. It's been 16, 17 years almost that we are here, and it's you drive a few hours and you're just in these wonderful places. So I camped for a couple of days on a place called Hicks Lake, which is in the middle of Sasquatch Provincial Park. Just what you can imagine. It's like where kitsch was invented. It's like when you look around, it's just ridiculous.
It's really cool. Yeah, I've gone climbing in Squamish before. That place is really good. Yeah, I was really impressed by it. And but it's kind of crazy because if you just look at a map and just go north of Vancouver, I mean, there's a lot of wilderness, like a lot.
Northeast, it's like wherever you go, and the beauty of BC is really that within a couple of hours driving, and sometimes not only that, you're in completely different climates and completely different nature. So basically, whatever rocks your boat, no pun intended, including boating, if you head west, because you kind of can't do that without hitting some water, you'll have a lot of opportunities to enjoy yourself immensely.
Cool. So, and some the audience members roll in here. Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, I'm envious of where you live. I mean, we live in Utah, and there's a lot to do outside here too, but it's different. We don't really have like rainforest or mountains like you do. We have mountains, I guess. Like there's a lot of them.
We
here,
definitely
but,
have mountains, but also it's also like 100 degrees right now, and it's going to be 104 tomorrow, I think.
Yeah, and you're going to go down to the desert, right?
Well, it's about the same though. Like I'm not really. It's not going to be.
Well, I told you about my one camping experience in Utah, right? No. Well, Antelope Island, so your home city pretty much, and we showed up there. It was about 6 p.m. as a part of our very, very long trip that we actually took a camping trip and all the way down to Colorado, and then back up through Wyoming and Yellowstone, get back home. So on the way down there, we went through Utah, and the idea was to camp on Antelope Island, and we noticed that the campsite was completely deserted. It's like, what the hell is going on? And then we started building a tent, and we realized that the whole ground was moving with fire ants. And yeah, it was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. Like I've never seen so many of those critters at the same time. And we were like, okay, are we going to tough it out somehow? And children said no. So we camped at La Quinta that evening, which had pool, and that placated them, and then we were able to continue in the trip. So that was our one camping experience in Utah.
When I see fire ants, I run the other way. I've had bad experiences with fire ants.
Yeah, same. Well, awesome. Let's talk about Josh Gallant. Fire ants are the worst. Yes, they are. Yeah. As a kid, I used to taunt hills of fire ants with Anyway, I ended up by being covered in them, and
they paid you back.
Oh yeah, I learned not to do that. Yeah. So it's back in the day, kind of a mischievous kid. Anyway, cool. So let's talk about, the title of today is preparing for a faster moving data industry. And I think you have a lot of thoughts on this. We can kind of go through these. I think some of the things we wanted to cover was kind of the commoditization of cloud data warehouses, Dataset Consolidation, focusing on ROI, self-serve, and then automation, which I think is something you talked about today. So let's get into that. I mean, and the cool thing is, let me just show these off real quick. Is you got a series of posts actually under a hashtag. Was it Data Crystal Ball Week? So we'll just show these off real quick here. So you got Yeah, number 2 right here, Dataset Consolidation. Number 1 right here, Cloud Data Warehouses Market Commoditization. So yeah, if anyone wants to check these posts out, just check out this hashtag here, or just go to his profile and find the posts. LinkedIn search is absolutely horrendous, and so you may or may not actually find these posts if you go to his profile, but is what it is. So anyway, let's talk about point number 1. Let's talk about data warehouse consolidation. What's your thoughts on that?
Commoditization, actually.
Oh, commoditization. Yeah, sorry.
I think it's a really interesting place to watch, right? And we've seen it over last year that a lot of people saw, oh, Snowflake's doing really well. There, might be a space for a bit more, and you start having challenges popping up, right? And challengers popping up, and I think it's going to be really interesting to see because. Snowflake is very busy building modes and expanding their reach, Unistore, data sharing, all of that great stuff they're doing, and don't take me wrong, hey, I think, I'm a big fan, right? The reality being, though, that, if you focus on a very narrow area, like what let's say Firebolt is doing, and saying, hey, we'll be just really efficient and really fast over really large tables with a lot of the event stuff. You can optimize on that use case and become significantly more efficient in it than a generic tool. So what's going to happen is that. In my opinion, right? Necessary disclaimer. No, I think that Chris stole it last week. Actually, couldn't find it this morning. What I expect is really going to happen that, and we are already seeing signs, right? Because we are agnostic, we work with multiple data warehouses. That really people are starting to look as a part of the FinOps approach to, okay, how much does this particular use case cost me? Right? And what is the return on investment on that one? And is there a way of optimization? And with sort of a generalization of a lot of tools and tools that are abstracting the data warehouse from you in some way, I expect that there is going to be a lot of freedom on saying, this particular use case, if I use a different data warehouse or different database for it, even taking into consideration the transfer cost in both time and money is actually going to save me significant amount of money with not as much increase in complexity. This is the biggest critique I get to this particular outlook, and that is that the complexity and going into multiple warehouses again, it's not going to be worth it. But the one thing that all these warehouses are doing is to making it really easy to administer them. So they're working towards that already. I believe that somebody, I should have put this, that Snowflake might feel expensive, but how about the total ownership cost? Because you don't have to spend that much money and effort on managing and maintaining that. Well, that will be the case for everybody else who's doing in that market, because so it will get much easier to maintain that. And again, if somebody comes to your CFO and say, hey, this particular workload you have, we can save you 80% on that, they'll listen.
Well, I'm also convinced that part of the reason people think Snowflake is expensive is that it's OpEx and not CapEx. Because if you ever signed a Teradata contract, that's expensive. And often you look at these Snowflake bills and it's like, okay, that's, $1 million a year or whatever, but that's actually not. If you've ever signed one of these heavy duty contracts, it's actually not that bad, especially given the reduced operational complexity. But it's a big mindset shift to get in the habit of being able to pay those bills and realizing that it's worthwhile.
Yeah. No, 100%, and just saying OpEx, and I know that I think on the Thursday note, we'll be talking about ROI and, thinking about it. But, Chris and I had a conversation on this topic, and really that there are probably opportunity to create some blueprints and some best practices of how to account for this stuff and really understand those costs, right? Because yes, we're shifting to OpEx when it comes to technology. I think that we should also shift to CapEx when it comes to labor expansion, because you are doing some of the work is actually building the asset, is actually building the environment, building the infrastructure, not actually providing any value at that moment. So it should be capitalized, when you think about it this way. And I think that it would help leaders to really understand what the cost structure is, and they need to do that in order to be able to optimize the cost going forward. So again, interesting space to watch for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting. And commoditization is an interesting one too. I think that like I look at what Databricks is doing, for example, right, and I look at what Snowflake is doing, and if you kind of look at the trajectory of both companies, they're basically on a collision course for parity. And one's going to look exactly like the other at the current rate they're going, which I think is fine. I mean, it's what the market needs.
You want competition, right? You don't want to have a monopoly. Yeah,
exactly. And it's funny because you see the cloud vendors, their versions of these, these data platforms, as we'll call them. I mean, they're good enough, right? And so it kind of reminds me of what happened with Microsoft Office and Teams. Right, where Teams is good enough, and if it's a choice between buying that or Slack, for example, if you're looking to cut costs, you're probably going to go with Teams. That's just how it is. At the same time, I was actually having lunch with some software engineers the other day, and I'm not even kidding when they said that half the engineering team said they were going to quit if they were forced to use Teams.
So this is a good story.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty. Like, well, at least you know where you stand on this topic. So, but it's a real thing, but that's also I would see where the cloud vendors have the advantages. They can bundle a lot of extra stuff, and especially if you're Microsoft, you can bundle in your contracts. Like, well, you can use Synapse, and maybe it's not as feature rich as Snowflake, but we're going to also give you a huge discount on Office. And that's where it gets very interesting for the commoditization thing, because it's like now you're basically dealing with like just good enough.
To elaborate on the team example, I think there's actually a counterexample to this, right? Because it's the users who come to you and say, "Hey, we don't want this," right? Like this is not something. And when we say users, we must stop thinking about us, right? The data geeks who understand the difference between what is the feature here and what is there, because the end users, ultimately, they don't give a aerial fornication on what is the database behind the scenes, right? It's literally like what they care about, do I get the report and how long does this thing spin? And then the other very important user or beneficiary is worrying, how much does it cost for that wheel to spin, right? For a second or two. Those are the primary movers in the decisions going forward. And really, nobody cares what we think, right? We just need to deliver the business value, use whatever tools we deem necessary and needed, but with more and more scrutiny and supervision from does it make business sense? And that's what leads necessarily towards commoditization and squeezing margins and all of those good things, which again will be very interesting to watch how Snowflake is going to be reacted, because I believe they will get squeezed a bit.
You heard it here first. Crystal ball prediction.
Yeah, here it is.
Number one. Okay, let's go to.
We're gonna turn that into a short. We'll put it on YouTube.
Put it on short,
everyone knows. Yeah.
And we'll say that Milan predicted this would happen. We'll set a time for it, and then we'll come back and
prove me wrong. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Please do that.
Let's talk about Dataset Consolidation real quick. That's another interesting one. I think, what's your thoughts on that?
Read a lot of recent stuff, and the whole modern data stack is that, and the conversation I had with Nick Houdecker was a quite interesting one as well. The point is that in order to do anything in data today, the complexity is just enormous. It is to the point of ridiculousness, right? Like what you need to understand, what you need to do, and being controversial a little bit. Rateman Analytics had article about, 4 or 5 months ago, I noticed it, describing how they use the technologies that they represent as a consulting company internally. And, they wrote a really beautiful article of how this, only took a year of one person, which is actually the guy, right? So my question, what would this cost the customer? If they came to you and say, hey, use the same knowledge that you already have over all these technologies and build this together for us, right? And the answer was, haha, trick question. No, honestly, right? The point is that in order to build something, and what they built is actually almost laughably simple, right? In terms of what the use cases are being supported there, but the complexity that went into it and the knowledge, to borrow Zhamak's term, cognitive load, in order to make something relatively simple like this work, it's just absolutely out of bounds. And then not everybody can afford somebody like Item Analytics to come with all their knowledge and do it for them, right? So what is this leading to? And again, the data is there, right? You have Mozart data, River, Nextslug, these guys, Keboola, of course, to plug it in. Looking at this differently and saying, look, guys, this really shouldn't be a project, it should be a product. Like in 80% of the cases, again, the end users don't care what is the technology behind it. What we care about is productivity. And we get to productivity by removing the human middleware. Again, that's borrowed from Lauren. There is a lot of thinking on this happening. This is not just me. I think that we can definitely see the trend. And again, when you look at guys like Mozart, they're obviously their message is landing, right? They're growing. We have data leaders today who come to you and say, hey, I've built data stack using, Stage 5 Tran, DBT, all of those things in the past. Now I have a new job, a new company. I left all that behind. Let's not discuss what happened. But I would like to do something else this time, right? So we are seeing the tendency of focus from the technology and just playing with new shiny toys to actual what's going to deliver the most value for the organization. And a lot of it comes with consolidation, automation, simplifying of the, removing of the complexity of tools, rather than having to go into new research, new contract, new security audit every time you need to add a relatively straightforward feature. Or in a worst case scenario, which we see a lot of time, you have 12 categories of tools in modern data stack, right? And I submit that 6 of them are there only to deal with the problems that are caused by using the other 6, right? That really you have relatively few things that are actually providing business value. Give you an example. Let's say you say, okay, so now we have 4 different tools already in our data stack. So now for security purposes, we should probably implement user management of some kind, right? So now you dedicate your data engineers or your architects or people to this particular activity. You're providing exactly 0 economical value to the end users. You're only de-risking the fundamental issue architecture that you started with, right? You're undoing that problem that you caused by building it. And that doesn't mean it is your fault, right? Because you might not have any other option at that point. But the fact is that all you're doing is now spending sometimes months of time not providing value to the business, not doing things like, implementing new use cases because you are, rolling out duct tape to pull things together somehow.
That's really interesting.
Okay, I'm sorry for that outpour, but
what's that?
I'm sorry for that outpour. It seems like you guys are a little stunned with that.
No. I mean, it totally resonates because I see this all the time where companies end up with a bunch of tools and then the integration costs go really, really sky high, right? Because either you don't integrate and that creates all kinds of problems. Like now your users need to have accounts in 4 different systems. You need to manage all those accounts separately and you have separate admin teams. Or you go in and do the admin work, and it is, like you were saying, kind of like a CapEx expense to invest in the future. And that never looks good, right? It's like, oh, they're not really getting anything done. What is this data team doing?
But it's sort of like the invisible hand also has its place in the data stacks too. And so there'll be a company or some solution that'll come and fix that. I mean, as Tabb says here, they fill gaps. I made the quip that it's called the modern data gaps. But it is interesting seeing the explosion of, I would say, also niche companies as well that come in and fix a lot of the issues, that somehow pop up. It's a game of whack-a-mole in a lot of ways, right?
And that's what happened, right? Like that's the history of modern data stack. That here is a thing that needs solving. right, for all those companies that got this far in their journey, because initially it was really easy, right? You get some ETL2 or ELT, right? Uh, Dump it to Snowflake, you put Looker on it, you do all your modeling in LookML. Like, how hard can that be, right? And then you add DBT. Then you add, okay, so what if I want to run some Python code on this? I don't have that, so okay, I'll do something else. Oh crap! Now I probably need to somehow keep an understanding of data lineage, so I might need something else for that. And before you know it, you have 7 to 12 different tools. And then I'm going to break one of your rules, guys, because I've watched this talk for a few weeks in a row recently, and he usually start talking about data mesh in the last 10 minutes. So I'm going to drop that word now.
No. You have to wait till the last 10 minutes, so we can't. Big tradition.
No. I'm not. I'm non-conforming. You probably guessed that at this point. But no, what I want to mean is that what's interesting that you build this, and then you're saying, oh, culturally, we can do something like data mesh. You physically can't, because there is no way for an infrastructure that is put together this way to be shared, to be used by other people, because then, in every domain, you would have to have an expert on the whole stack with understanding of the interdependencies and all of those things. And it's just not feasible, and you'll finish there. So hence, you have several pressures in the market from the productivity point of view, from the complexity point of view, from this to consolidate and find, I predict, if you want one,
Yeah.
that we'll see more and more of those things, either through acquisitions, despite of the the discussions we had with Eaton on the state of the market, which is not very MA friendly at the moment. But I do think that companies that are currently niche will have to expand. So we'll probably see something happening there for sure. And we are seeing that, ThoughtSpot buying a reverse ETL company. It's a little strange because ThoughtSpot is on the BI side of things, but it makes sense. It's a usage of data, great, right? What Snowflake is doing with Streamlit, and what type of companies Snowflake Ventures is investing in. It's all showing you this sort of consolidation direction. And then you have a new companies popping up that are providing to some degree data as a service or a consolidated stack as a product.
Or consolidating on current paradigms, right? But there's always something new coming down the pipe, and that's what's fascinating too. It just shows the evolution and the maturity of the industry, right? Where things mature, consolidate, but there's always something new. Like, I'm excited to see what happens, frankly, because I think we're kind of modern data stack basically brought what we've been doing for the last 30 years into the cloud. But I can't say this is like the final plateau of where data is. I'd be very disappointed if it was.
Well, no,
right?
I mean, the broader problem with modern data stack is not only did it bring all these things into the cloud, but it almost made them too easy, right? And I think that's the main source of this big argument, right? Okay. Too easy, so people without, in some sense, any idiot can do it. And I don't mean to call people.
I'll add one word, and that is okay. appear too easy. Right?
Yes.
Right,
that's right.
Because the first step is easy, right? And then but you start peeling the onion, and the closer you're to core, the more you cry, right? That is what is happening. That is what is happening there. Because hey, all I need is Salesforce data here, so I can put Looker on top of it. Easy, modern data stack, great. The problem is the exponential growth of complexity as you're adding more complex use cases over time, and then you'll end up in a Hadoop-like situation where, you install Hadoop and everything's going to be great, sounds easy. 3 years later, a couple $1 million in, we are still not getting the use cases that we were hoping for. The pattern repeats itself, I'm afraid.
Well, and Joe was talking about this before the show, just a bunch of tables. I mean, that's the pattern, unfortunately, we're seeing with the modern data stack, and it's not the fault of the tools, but we kind of need two evolutions. First of all, we need to, fix the training problem and say, hey, modern data stack still requires training and best practices. And then second, to your point, what comes next? Like, this is not really new. It's just somewhat better version of old tools.
I'll leave the industry right now if this is where we're at. I mean, it's just like, it's pointless. It's like, okay, great. We're rehashing a lot of the same stuff we've been doing, again, for the past 30, 40 years. And it's like, next evolution to me is streaming, integrating ML into all workflows, integrating closer to software. Unstructured data is a really big one. Yeah. Things that we're just barely glossing on right now. But but the cool thing is, in terms of practices and in terms of companies and consolidations, it's like there's so many niche companies coming out. But I think today's niche is tomorrow's standard and tomorrow's mainstream. So that's kind of how that goes, and it's always been the evolution of technology, though, right? So
this thing with streaming and unstructured data, yes, there are use cases where it absolutely is the key, right? And you can't live without it. But we're talking about supporting businesses, right? There's always going to be an invoice and a line on the
Yep.
invoice and a person doing something and a time ticket and
No, it's the
those
blockchain
things.
actually. So
The
it'll,
business world is fundamentally relational, right? And batch, so I'm not saying that those things are irrelevant. They absolutely aren't. They have their own use cases. Working with a company that does video streaming, so obviously there is so much, streaming data going on, and no pun intended in that particular case. But the fact is that the batch and relational processing of data is not going away, right? It's just going to be augmented with the rest. And generally, even if you're working with stream or unstructured data, at the end of the day, there is something generating a SQL query that is actually answering your business question. So, those things are very, very tightly interconnected.
yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like Bill Inman's spending all of his time right now on unstructured text. That's his focus, and like he practically invented a lot of this industry too. But it's just because he realized like a lot of the data out there it's unstructured text, and so taking advantage of that and bring it back into a data warehouse. I think that's pretty fascinating, and it's just stuff like that. Yeah, definitely we live in a batch oriented world right now, until everything is on the blockchain. And I'm joking. Then we live in the metaverse and all this
Finally,
stuff.
yeah.
Finally, there's a use case for this stuff.
I mean, has the blockchain paused now that all the tech bros are at Burning Man this week? Or it's probably not running right now.
I'll have to go check praying for exits and see what's going on there. Yeah, but it's interesting. I think consolidation, it's already happening, and it'll start happening more. I think Ethan Aaron, he used to work in M&A actually, and he said there's probably next 18 months you're going to see a lot of activity going on. Just that's how it is.
No, he actually said you won't. Because go back to that call. I was referring that earlier because he's saying that because of the overcapitalization of the companies, they're basically very unsellable at the moment. I agree and disagree with him on that one because I think that the pressures of market of doing it, and a lot of those companies that are overcapitalized will burn through that cash, and obviously they're trying not to do that now. So there will be some fire sales, there will be some consolidations. It will be again interesting space to watch. Yeah,
for sure. We'll set up a GoFundMe and buy a few companies, and it'll be a lot of fun.
That sounds great. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll get you on the ground floor of this great deal. So you just have to keep hanging out and watching our chats and suffering through those. Number 3, Wednesday, focus on ROI. This is the other crystal ball. What's up with that?
What I've seen in a lot of companies, or what we've seen in a lot of companies, is hey, here is a data team, here is a CIO, here is your budget, and do things. That is stupid in long term. Like it's that nobody understands what's happening there. What is the budget being spent on? So we are starting to see, and again, we were talking about FinOps, right? The term that is popping up. It's really like what is it that is happening here? Like this query in Snowflake that costs, I'll exaggerate, 2 credits, even though I can probably write one that will do that, is what is it bringing? What is the value of that one, right? Because today a business comes to you and say, hey, this report is awesome. Can we have it updated every 15 minutes? Well, there is a cost attached to that, right? And the ability to understand the cost and be able to tell this business owner and say, all right, extra $100 a day, it's from your budget, buddy, right? You need to justify that. You need to justify that. And in order to do this well, you need to do the second step, which is really understanding of what the data team, what the core data team is spending their money on, their time on. If they're building a use case for somebody, okay, that's an OpEx. That's great, right? They're supporting somebody. But if they're integrating user management, sorry guys, that's a CapEx thing. That goes into the thing should be and should be then added to the ongoing cost, and really understanding this, especially in a situation that we are now. The budgets are getting squeezed, the financing is not that easy to get, the pressure on, and the CFOs level of granularity they will want to understand where this cost is coming from is going to definitely increase. And I think it's a healthy thing. It needs to happen. I think it's kind of ridiculous to be doing data just because your competition is doing it without really understanding what will be the value it's going to bring it to you. So I foresee that this is going to continue, and people will start paying much more attention to it, and which goes to our conversation, Joe, we had a few weeks ago on the really understanding the total cost of ownership, which includes opportunity cost.
Yep.
Right? The hidden costs are something that is so overlooked because nobody really wants to talk about it. Right? It's like a bored data engineer that doesn't have anything good to do at the moment is an opportunity cost that is or who just is spending his 1 day a week playing with a new shiny technology that he might want to use one day. It's an opportunity cost, and it's overlooked and sometimes intentionally hidden from the business leadership.
And there's a certain Silicon Valley attitude that just kind of says, oh, hire a bunch of people and then throw them at whatever. And I don't think well-run Silicon Valley companies operate that way. It's sort of a dark pattern in Silicon Valley you see sometimes. And I think this burned a lot of companies in the Hadoop era because it was like, oh, Hadoop is cheap, right? It's free. And then they would end up spending $1 million a year on salaries, sometimes just managing the cluster without even really getting much done.
Yeah, no,
It's
exactly.
Right. You worship at the altar of big data, as you've said. Yeah.
Like Hadoop was free, Cloudera was not.
Right. Yes, throw that in too. Yep.
I mean, it's weird about ROI because it's such a obvious thing. It's weird that we have to talk about it, but we always talk about getting value from data. But I'm like, why are we talking? It should be the most obvious thing that should be like just done and not really talked about. It, like, I don't know. Like we run a business, we have to run a profitable business, and I'm kind of like, if you ain't making money, ain't making a profit, then figure out, why you're not. Right? It's just this is 101.
No, I absolutely agree, and it's bizarre to some degree that that the ways can be operating this way, and say, how do you set up your data team budget, and how do you define what do you need those 5 analytical engineers for, and what is the value that is actually done. So it needs to be paid more attention to, and as I'm saying, the data leaders need to brush up on their accounting a little bit to be able to have a conversation with the CFO, right?
Exactly. Number 4, self-serve.
Yeah. 2019, right? Zhamak and her data mesh founding article, and
it's not the 10 minutes till top of the hour. Sorry, we can't talk about data
I know.
mesh.
Sorry. No, but I think that what is really important is that with the and all those things are connected with each other, right? So we're looking at productivity, we're looking at consolidation of the data stack, which makes it easier to give people access to tools. And it started in the BI world with obviously sometimes a little too fast, and it's happening here as well because it's significantly easier to take a data savvy marketing person who understands marketing and what is happening and what the organization needs business wise and teach them SQL and a couple of tools they could use in order to self-serve. And as long as you put them in well-governed environment when they really can just go and start doing crazy stuff. And data mesh is providing some guide rails of how that should actually work or how it could work. So I do see that. And we see it with our customers. We see it in companies who build data mesh before it was defined because they were thinking about it this way, and they effectively have data product. They effectively have domain owners, and it's just what happened there that data mesh gave terminology to that. But a lot of those principles, thinking of data as a product, data contracts, how that's going to look like, how that's going to define what you can rely on when you're using that particular data product. And then the federated governance, which is a very interesting term, of making sure that you are staying within some kind of guidelines doing this. That is, all of these things will become significantly easier to overcome, and you'll start getting the benefits of the self-serve and the distributed data team effectively when you can attach. I called it a data democracy, right? When really the business teams are not only enabled but also encouraged to bring in their own data people that can work with the environment of the company within the context of what that team actually needs and provide better data products for the rest of the company. It's definitely moving in that direction, and I think we're going to see more of that. Tying it back to before, it's not going to work very well in a fragmented data stack. So the consolidation is absolutely necessary in order for this to promote. But I do believe that those things will go hand in hand.
It's funny because I think there's this notion of data democracy, and I'm going to use the term data democracy for decentralization where you have strong leadership. But let's come up with let's also talk about data populism. And maybe data populism is where it's just like grossly mismanaged and you've got data scattered all over the place and not managed.
Data libertarianism. I don't know.
Because it seems like, I guess what I mean is you see this go wrong, right? I mean, data democracy, absolutely. The ideal world, you have, decentralization, but really good management. But we've all seen it go wrong too, and so it seems like we need a term for that.
Oh yeah, no, you're absolutely correct. It can be a runaway train. And what is important is going back to understanding the cost, right? Like, what this person is doing? What is it costing the organization? What are the guidelines around what they can have access and they don't, and how are they enforced, and all sorts of things. Semantic. I don't like the semantic layer point, but the semantics of what it means. What is the definition of this particular metric or this particular column or this particular table needs to be understood the same way across the organization. Like, I think my personal record is 7 definitions of the word customer within one organization, right? So that is super important to provide the foundation for everybody to work from, and then the risk of the populism, is reduced enough that you are not afraid to abandon the dictatorship extreme on the other side.
Interesting. Make DataSex great again.
Sorry? What did you say?
Make DataSex great again.
Okay.
It's upon an authoritarianism.
Joe's trying to generate controversy here, drum up more views or something.
Okay.
More. Number 5, automation.
In a conversation that I had with Veronika about a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, we were talking about this, and what came out of it as a quote is that, as a data engineer, every time you write a Python script to move a CSV file from one place to the other, a little piece of you dies. It comes down to the opportunity cost. Like, these are really, really smart people. We have incredible pressure on the talent pool, and people think we don't have enough data experts. Well, I actually think it's not a shortage of talent, so to speak. It's a surplus of stupid work, right? Like a stuff that they really shouldn't be doing, or their talents are absolutely wasted on, right? And a lot of it comes to automation. Like, how many, I have this beef, with some of the orchestration tools that require coding. Like, if I ask my data engineer to code something, I will want them to code something that is creating business value, meaning the code that is actually enriching the data and doing something. I don't want them to code something that's going to stand up the right size of data warehouse, or that's going to make sure that the data move to a particular place. Those all are predictable and solved for problems that they really, really shouldn't be doing, right? People are talking a lot about the vendor login, but how about a employee login, right? Especially in a current labor market. Like, what is the higher risk here? So I think that automation is going to be a key, because a lot of things just can be done without necessarily a person's automation. Like, I don't need to understand, and I don't. I'll say it, all the nitty-gritties of how to manage a Snowflake instance, or Snowflake account, because I have a platform that does it for me, and all I have to do is to write a SQL, and it tells me how much it costs, so I know whether I did it right or not, and whether it makes sense for ROI. And I really don't care about everything else because my job is to deliver the business value. So whatever can help me, that's where automation comes in on the repetitive, boring tasks that people, they might get kickoff of solving it again, but again, there is no ROI on that effort because it could have been just as well done by something that it's there and it could be done automatically.
I feel like data jobs, there's kind of a spectrum all the way from like white collar to blue collar. And the blue collar side of things is that in practice, we're doing a lot of, well, yeah, that's true. Yeah. But in practice, we're doing a lot of very manual work. And I don't mean, blue collar as in like working in a very efficient factory. I mean, sometimes it feels like we're just digging trenches with a shovel when we could be using a trencher.
It back in. Sometimes. I had that as a punishment once as a kid too. Okay. Yeah. Go dig this hole, go fill it back in again. Do that about 10 times.
Yeah, I see Veronika. I see Veronika commenting then. So, Matt, don't start us on shovels. That was the other conversation earlier. I don't know if you captured that. But yeah, shovels are important. Having the right one. Yeah.
Or a trencher, right? Sometimes the trencher is the right tool, but like something efficient or something that's automated if it could be automated rather than like just repeating. There's this like Sisyphean aspect of data where you just kept doing the same stuff over and over again, which is part of what you're alluding to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And look, automation of processes is de-risking the business.
Yep.
Right? Because the more human middleware you have, the more susceptible or the more sensitive you are to changes in the the labor force. Like people are leaving, right? And if you are a pizza shop or pizza chain, it's really hard to, to retain and maintain a good data architect to do that. And you don't really need one because, frankly, you don't need that much else than your competition who's a sandwich shop, right? Your competitive advantage is not how brilliantly your data stack is set up. Your competitive advantage is how effectively you're using the data to make better business decisions. And again, for absolute majority of businesses, these are predictable patterns that, is the second part of the post, which was, we'll probably see more templatization. We'll see re-emerge of sort of out-of-the-box solution for particular use cases. We are actually already seeing it, Come to Big Data London if you want to see some more, and we can take it from there. Now there'll be a couple of interesting things coming there, but we're seeing it everywhere, right? Everybody's coming with predefined models and predefined flows and things like that, and it's more or less well implemented. But again, there are only so many ways how you can structure a data about invoices in your data warehouse, right? So why even going through the modeling exercise, with the exception of checking that you don't have any specific requirements that would require this extra column or this extra type of relationship between entities. And it's expanding to more and more. Like you can look at a whole e-commerce, and I can give you a data model that's going to apply 90% of the cases. Right.
Interesting. What's next? What are some other predictions you have?
Well, I was hoping that people will drop in some.
Well, I send a link out to some peeps. So if they show up, great. Specifically, Chris and Veronika, you guys should join real quick. No pressure. But yeah, it's interesting. So crystal ball. I mean, so what's the inspiration for this? Like, what's your process for thinking about the future of the data industry?
Well, it's all Ethan's fault, right? Because he dropped me into that category, so I had to come up with something. But I think it's just what I hope, and I hope it's not too self-centered. Is that all I am doing is looking around and applying common sense, right? It's because ultimately it's a business, and what you said before is that it's sort of ridiculous that we are thinking about data differently that we would in any other business setting, because it's a function of business. That's why we're doing it, right? And it lifted sort of this mystery cocoon because nobody really understands what's there, but they just know that they need to do something because that's what the market is doing. But I think that again, the onion's getting peeled, and we are understanding more and more of what's happening there, and the business will understand more. And when you really look at it from that perspective, everything else that I'm talking about just rolls from there, right? Because people will see the business opportunities. So, hi guys. um,
The
excellent.
usual suspects.
Chris, yeah, exactly. So, Chris, please disagree with something for once.
Well, yeah, I've got it. Okay, so basically, I've decided that short hair's cool, long hair's not. So I'm going to disagree with that because, yeah, I can't grow long hair now. So I'm going to have to disagree.
Hey, Chris. Hey,
Veronika
Chris.
looks
No,
really shocked about
it's
something.
a wrong way. It's a wrong way to look at it, right? I am collaborating with you on maintaining average. Right, so
this is the problem. It was that hard to find something to actually disagree, and actually, for once, I've been making notes as I go through, rather than putting it because I don't type that fast, and if I do, it gets spelling mistakes. So I thought I'd read them out instead. But I didn't know we'd have superstar Veronika joining us as well, so I may have to
I'm just here to talk about shovels. I'm just kidding.
I said, well, I've got some actually proper stuff to talk about for a change, and this is like. That was just the start of the joking thing. I mean, the OPEX CAPEX thing, I think, there's definitely a mindset change that's needed there. Like, we need to create something that you can provide that can evidence the accountants that you're doing something that is an asset that's going to be used over many years and can be depreciated. So it's not seen as an operational expense. I think the other thing you talked about was buying the technology. I've just called it the chicken and egg situation. So what we're going to do is now we're going to go to the board to say, you need to take this new approach again, because you know what, they've heard it before, but we're going to call it something even cooler this time. And if you buy this technology, it'll enable you to put in a process in place that will allow you to do the project that you do in the future, but that you would have actually need to do this assessment to do this project to put this tool in place, which it's a new sell. It might be possible, but I think it's quite hard to do that.
That's why,
talk about
that's why where you see it when people change jobs, right? Because it's very hard for them to say, I've been wrong for 3 years.
Yes.
And and we should do it differently. I now see the light. So it's much better to to monetize their past mistake learnings elsewhere. It's that is what happens, right? And then the old company gets stuck with the technical debt, and then somebody else comes and say, yeah, that guy was doing it wrong. That's the first rule of power shift, is to blame your predecessor, right?
It's that emotional attachment to decisions, and reviewing historical decisions and saying, yeah, I was wrong, but let's do this time. But the problem is they've given data or information which they've been tarnished. You'll have people that have bigger voices there. So that links having a community. That community, you can find out who's going to actually support you do this and what is the right thing that goes back to that business value. I put some notes about here about leveling up your capabilities, and I think someone put a comment the other day about one of my mems saying I've leveled up to another level or something, and I think it's quite a good analogy of when you're playing these computer games or whatever, and you've got different capabilities you need for your governance or your ingest or your data capabilities. It's what you need at that point of time. But what's linked to that is what shape team you need to support that at that point in time. And every company, all they want to do is be better than their competitor or create some USP or something that makes them different in the world. And as long as they're ahead of the curve, they'll survive. If they're not, they're below. So they should be tracking that. And I think this, the data engineer dream that we sold everyone, and I hope your book's helping with that, like saying what it really is of being a data engineer, and I'm pretty sure it is, it's everywhere, is, this is reality of what we're doing. We're doing this for an end customer. We're doing this to make money that pays the bonus. We're not doing this for you to learn some new coding framework, but then you need to give them something that gives them that outlet to do that. Otherwise they will go, or you need a different shaped team. So yeah, it's a challenge, but yeah, I think talking about it on these shows is good. And I'm still trying to find something. I always seem to be very aligned with your views. I think our drunken conversations in many Vegas trips may have infused our ideas together. So it's very good. But yeah, great conversation. I've been very, very yeah, for once I was actually sitting here listening, apart from 2 phone calls and interrupted. But right, Veronika, I've hogged it. How are you doing?
I know. I don't know what to disagree with you on. I'm like trying, like, let's start, 5 conversations. You're right, though. Like, but theoretically, everything, all of that sounds great. But as somebody at a company, how do I solve all of that? Oh, he's drinking already. Look at you.
Well, it's 9 p.m. here. It's 9 p.m. and it's actually my first one. I've actually come in paying attention and sober for a change.
What? No.
Yeah, it happens sometimes.
Well, Friday, it's crazy. Well, congrats.
Thank you.
I was like, I'm like FOMO again. I'm like, forgot to grab a beer.
It's early for you guys. When we start doing these shows UK
Never
time,
early. It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Yeah.
Maybe a Sunday afternoon drinking one in like would be a good one. We could all be in the same sort of like mode at the same time, rather than all being in Vegas at the same time.
Well, we'll be in London at the same time in a few weeks.
Will.
Please don't. I'm having such a FOMO. I did not get the memo that all the cool people were going to London.
Yeah. Well, Joe, you going? And Matt, you going?
Nah,
I'm not planning
I
to.
won't
It's a
have
big
time.
trip.
I got to be in Australia
So,
the next week. So
I'm hearing some noise background. Like, so was that? Yeah, you're working on it or something? Was that, you're going to bring my book with you? It will save you the post.
I have to speak in Australia that week, so I'm not going to be able to make it. So
okay.
Oh, excuse me. He just dropped it casually. He'll be in even cooler place.
London.
Big data Australia is better than big data London.
No, we're very good connecting flights to Australia because, well, we found it first of all, didn't we? So, yeah, we know exactly where it is from London. We can go straight there.
Yeah, I'll take a ship there. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
It takes a long time.
So, yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, so I guess is it a bad thing that everyone agrees with each other?
No, I think the thing is you've got some like-minded people here. I think what we're looking for is that anyone out there, if you're disagreeing what we're saying and you think there's reasons why you shouldn't do it, let's challenge it, because getting that sort of voice out there saying this is the way of doing it, like the reason why we're all talking it, there's no financial benefit from us all coming up here and saying this. Well, actually, maybe for you a little bit. No, there's not. We're talking about doing the right thing for your company at the right time. And and that is the reason we're here, because there is some stuff that been here for a while. We've seen what can be done, and I think what made me much more passionate and more active was the bashing of the modern data stack. And I'm thinking, look, you guys are saying that this modern data stack, the problem is we've solved those problems before. You just missed them. I think that gaps, the thing of the gaps being created, and gaps have been good, all right. And every stage has been good, and I think there's a massive opportunity for us to learn by each era. So, and there's an opportunity for us all to be active that can span each of these eras. And what you're doing with your education stuff, Joe, I'm sure will allow that. But having like we've done this before, let's mold these things together. Those gaps you've seen before, this is how you solve them. And also, it keeps the vendors on their toes as well, because we've had this Oracle, Microsoft, SAP world before, which controlled the whole market. It was simple then. It was one vendor. You spoke to,
actually, but
sorry?
I said it still kind of does for the most part. So
well, if you think of how many of those vendors are actually part of a modern data stack, you can actually choose a modern data stack that doesn't touch any of those old players from the old world. So
except their ERP systems.
That's true.
Many source systems are still very much.
But the modern ERP stack, that's going to be a lot harder to pull off. So, but I just see your point, though. Yeah.
And then we had this democratization thing that we talked about as well. And I think I put a post. I call it the autonomy wars. And that goes back to maturity. When it's the right time to give that autonomy to someone to do something, and when it doesn't. But the problem is no one ever does those checkpoints. So, by the way, okay, let's go and check. How are you doing, man? Oh, we got to this. So what's your data volume? It's this now. What's the size of your company? It's this now. What's your retention of your clients or your staff at the moment? It's, right, okay, right at the moment, you probably need to level up. Here you go. This is where you level up on these different bits. And maybe this technology helps with that leveling up, or maybe it doesn't, or maybe this will be the right time for that technology to level up. And having some sort of way of saying, am I doing good in the industry? Am I ahead of the game? I'm having a benchmark for that.
It's difficult. We invest a lot of money into technologies, especially older technologies, and it's very difficult for companies to justify moving off of those technologies. It's a lot
100%.
cheaper and faster to keep, scotch taping them, super gluing them. At some point, it's all gonna collapse. But
You're
it
right. Yeah.
takes a
But
while.
hopefully you will have moved to another job by that point, right? So
That's the
But that's
problem.
unfortunately that's the truth. Yeah.
yeah,
But-
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Can I just jump
Of course, please. It's your show.
backwards in time? But no, once you showed up, Chris, not my show anymore. Going backwards is the decisions being made, right, which are super short-sighted. Which is, I need to solve the problem of today, not thinking about what does it mean for the next in the maturity of the company. And that's not saying that you should start with a enterprise grade solution from the beginning, but because you can't afford it, as a startup or two people team, you're not going to do all of those things. But you must not fall for the false impression that this is going to be easy and incremental, because it's incremental until the point when it crashes burning down, and then you're starting again, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's really
it's
important.
Not easy. It's never been easy, but it is possible. But totally aligned.
I think the idea is to keep it modular, right? Like focus things, keep it modular with the kind of idea that, oh, you can easily just take this whole thing out and put something else in. Don't go fully into something, but also get 50 million things that do a little tiny bit.
Or take a look at how does this thing look at a company that is 3 years ahead of you, 5 years ahead of you.
Oh,
right?
we've been doing that in the past, right? Like we had to predict the next 3-5 years. And the thing is, it's like, did you know that I know you have your crystal ball, but like, did you know 5 years ago that today, there you go, today will be today? I didn't. I could have never. Like, it's difficult. It's a difficult problem. I'm
In fact,
hoping
climate
5
change is
years
real
from now
fast,
will be
too.
a lot different. Yeah.
I am talking about something a little bit else, actually, Veronika. And the thing is that whatever it is you're gonna do, somebody has done it already, right? It's like, unless you are one of the two companies that are really pushing things forward, being SpaceX, everything else, so absolute majority our customers are just repeating others people or following others people's path, very often not knowing what that path is, right? The saying is that good experience comes from good judgment, and good judgment comes from bad experience. So we are putting this in place, and you're looking at saying, all right, I would like to talk to my peer, somebody who's those 3 years ahead, right? That went through the same journey. I want to talk to them about the decisions they made then and when. And yes, some of those things will have a limited relevancy because the market changed and the technology changed to some degree, but it's actually not changing that quickly. You still have people running on a Microsoft SQL 2007 version today, right?
Margaret, there is no Microsoft SQL 2007. Just be careful there. There was 5 and 8. Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
That was a beta version.
Fact checking.
But Milan, then the question is, how do we find those people that are
Big Data London? You pop down to
Community.
the booth. We've got a booth there, and we're
rub
going
it in. I am.
Yeah, 1 minute we won't be able to do it in, but we're going to have a lot more time there. I hear there's actually a show in the Data Mesh Theatre. So I think Data Mesh may be talked about on a panel that we're doing over there. Which have some usual suspects. Unfortunately, Joe, you couldn't make it on this occasion. I know. Let's not go back to the details. Lauren, I don't think she can make it at the moment. I'm not sure where she is at the moment. I haven't seen her on LinkedIn today. So, and then after that, there may be another after party for some special guests at a location close by.
Like Bono or somebody? Like,
no, there may be a townhouse located in the vicinity that someone may have access to that has a very nice garden.
That's your house, I think. You're talking
I wish.
Nice.
I squat in my own home in East London when I'm here. So
sweet. Cool. We're coming up on time. We've got a jet. Actually, Matt and I have to get to a meeting. But yeah, thanks for coming on, everybody.
It's been very, very constructive today, I have to say.
Yeah, so thanks for being very spontaneous, Veronika, and just
and good to meet you, Milan, in person.
Almost. Well, you'll have a chance in London in a few weeks. No, just kidding.
I
know. Where are you based, Veronika?
one of these days.
in Massachusetts and Boston.
Okay.
I am due in Boston in the next couple of months anyway, so maybe we can if we can
I think so are we. So let's all meet up there. So
yeah, do that. Yeah, well, let's coordinate that.
Let's do that.
Be good.
Awesome, cool.
Right.
So there might be a Monday morning data chat, I think, depending on Matt and I feel on Memorial or Labor Day. Sorry,
It may. I think what may happen is that we'll record something and actually edit it this time, so it may end up getting released on Tuesday.
So who knows?
It's hard to say.
Take the day off. Take the day
and
off.
the following we got
you can it too hard, and also I can't make it anyway because
that's why we're doing it.
It's not a bank holiday over here. So I have both America and UK on at that time, which is no way of doing anything. So yeah, so you take the day off and you deserve it, guys.
Yeah, bank holiday. And then we got Kent Graziano's on the show the next Monday morning data chat. We got Kent. He's going to be on, so that's going to be very cool. He's a Jedi master, so
very wise. He's like the Yoda of data.
And he agrees with you on the hair, but he's more of a long hair person.
And speaking of Yodas, Bill Inman's going to be speaking at the Utah Data Engineering Meetup on September 19th, I believe. So anyway, if you're around, it's going to be virtual. He's going to be talking about, he actually just released a new book, Text Analytics Simplified. And so it's worth checking out. I think it goes into what he's doing with text analysis. And what's super cool is, I mean, Bill's still thinking about this kind of stuff. He could be doing other stuff, and he just continues to push the industry forward. So it's really awesome to see. So anyway, thanks everybody. Thanks to the audience. Have a great weekend. Thanks, Milan, Veronika, Chris, Matt. Thank you as well. So
thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, no worries.
Good to be here.
Anytime. Okay.
Thank you guys.
Right.
Thank you guys
See
for
everybody.
having us.
See you later.
A lot of fun.
Bye.
Thank you.